What is going on, true crime fans? I'm your host, Heath.
And I'm your host, Daphne.
And you're listening to Going West.
Hello, everybody. Today's case is one that we've been wanting to cover for years. Before we just hit record, Heath was like, are you sure we haven't covered this? And it's because we know it so well.
We do know this one extremely well, and especially because it happened right around where you grew up.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it wasn't that long ago. It's just really bizarre. There's actually like at least 3 super strange cases that took place in this specific area, even though it's very safe and affluent and rural. Like, it's not an area you would expect so much mystery. I'm probably going to share a little story later of something that happened when I was living over here. It's honestly, I think I've told stories about this area before. It's like a spooky corner, even though it's so nice.
Yeah, it is one of those really like upscale parts of Los Angeles. Like, it feels like something like this just would not happen there.
No, truly. Remember my witch story?
Oh, yes. Is that the one you're going to tell today?
I know, but I might retell it. But anyway, this story is devastating. It is mysterious. It is so odd. And I can't wait to hear what you guys think. Please share this story. Please listen closely. And without further ado,
all right, guys, this is episode 534 of Going West. So let's get into it.
In September of 2009, a 24-year-old woman was released from a Los Angeles sheriff's station in the middle of the night after being arrested for failing to pay her bill at a Malibu restaurant. In the hours preceding her arrest, she had been acting strangely and speaking in riddles. She had no car with her, phone, or money, yet she seemed determined to set off into the dark hills of Malibu Canyon and was never seen alive again. This is the story of Mitrice Richardson. Mitrice LaVaughn Richardson was born on April 30th, 1985 to parents Letice and Michael in Covina, California, which is an eastern suburb of Los Angeles. Her parents eventually split up, and she spent the majority of her childhood living with her mom Letice and her stepdad Larry Sutton, who then had Mitrice's little sister, who was 14 years her junior. Now, growing up, Mitrice was always comfortable in the spotlight. She was a dancer, she was a beauty pageant contestant, and she was a competitive cheerleader. And in high school and college, she was an honor student to boot. According to her mom, Mitrice, quote, exuded so much life and energy. After graduating high school, she enrolled in Cal State Fullerton, where she maintained a 4.0 and graduated with honors, becoming the first person in her family to graduate college. So not only the first person to graduate, but she did so with honors and a 4.0. Like, she was doing very well. She was super smart. She was very motivated. And her mom, Letice, said proudly, quote, she believed it was important for everyone to get an education. Her aunt Lauren added, quote, she always did the right thing. So during college, she finally felt comfortable telling her family that she was a lesbian, and they were super supportive. So after graduating, she started dating a woman named Tessa. And things seemed to be going very well in her personal life with this relationship as well as her professional life. But in general, the late summer of 2009, 24-year-old Mitrice had her hands full. Because aside from enjoying her relationship, she was also dividing her time between 3 jobs. She was working on stage as a go-go dancer at a gay bar. She was interning under a clinical psychologist, and she was working at a shipping yard in Santa Fe Springs, California, which is like 20 miles or 32 kilometers southwest of her hometown of Covina. So 3 totally different jobs, but she was committed to supporting herself and just making her dreams come true, which was likely to become a psychologist. Because in addition to her work obligations, Mitrice had a fascination with the human psyche and a desire to help people, which I feel like it's kind of ironic that this was her fascination and that she had so much interest in this just due to what is going to happen to her. So she was considering pursuing graduate school as a psychology major. At the time of her disappearance, she was living with her great-grandmother, Mildred. We're going to talk about Mildred quite a bit today. And they were living in the Watts neighborhood of South Los Angeles, which was closer to work for Mitrice and also kept Mildred company. And that was really nice for them. They really enjoyed spending time together. They always set aside at least one evening per week to share dinner, even with Mitrice's crazy work schedule.
But even with her busy lifestyle and everything that she was working toward, and despite her normally cheerful and motivated disposition, Mitrice was struggling. Now, shortly before her disappearance, her friends and family began noticing that her mental health appeared to be declining. Although she had no formal history or diagnosis of bipolar disorder, her friends and family noticed increasingly erratic behavior, as well as constant social media posts on MySpace and Facebook. Again, remember, this is 2009, so that's very prevalent for a lot of people. And specifically, Mitrice seemed fixated on discussing theories about the meaning of life, especially when it came to nature and astrology, which isn't super weird, obviously. It's not a bad thing to be fascinated by this, but it definitely seemed deeper than just finding it fun to talk about. Like, she occasionally would refer to herself as Mother Nature. Her aunt, Lauren Sutton, claimed that the day before she disappeared, Mitrice stopped by her home, and when there was no answer at the door, she just littered the outside of her home with business cards for her go-go dancing bar. She also left a nonsensical note under the windshield wiper of her uncle's car, which was basically a series of scribbles that included a smiley face, the imprint of a kiss, and the words, quote, "Black women scorned."
And it's just kind of weird because she wasn't known to do anything like this, but suddenly in these few days, all these weird things are happening.
Right, yeah. I mean, it seems like it was kind of increasing fairly quickly.
Yes.
Well, in the days before this, she had been posting a non-stop stream of senseless ramblings on her social media. She was also brain dumping many of her thoughts and constant updates in her journal, which was removed from her car after she went missing. On the evening of her disappearance, Wednesday, September 16th, 2009, Mitrice arrived home from her job at the shipping yard earlier than she was expected to, and she told her grandmother Mildred that she would be missing their dinner together to go on this spontaneous trip to Malibu for the evening. Now, Mildred remembers Mitrice offering little explanation as to where she was going or when she would be back, but that it seemed odd that Mitrice was missing their dinner. Now, obviously, like we keep saying, she was busy, but it was just another thing that felt kind of off that week.
Yeah, and a seemingly large list of things that felt really just weird.
Right.
So Mitrice headed north on PCH, or the Pacific Coast Highway, to Joffrey's, which is a bar and restaurant right on the water. It has been a Malibu institution pretty much since it opened in 1983.
Is that the bar and restaurant that was burned down in the fires?
No, Duke's burnt down.
But that one did survive.
No, it did. Yeah, it actually was untouched. It was further up the coast,
Gotcha.
Luckily, but we did think for a second that it was going to go. But it didn't. It's still there. So Mitrice, she drove up to Joffrey's. She went to the valet stand, and after being told that the restaurant was valet only, there's not a parking lot to open that she could just park in, she was like, okay, she left their car with them. But instead of entering the restaurant like you would do after dropping your car at valet, Mitrice wandered through the parking lot and hopped into the car belonging to the valet attendant, which was parked nearby, and she began going through his things. Now, I don't know if I can't imagine she knew that this was the valet's car.
Yeah, it seems like she wouldn't know that, right?
Yeah, it just maybe that it was just a car that she decided for whatever reason to go through. So, naturally, extremely confused by this, the valet asked her what she was doing, and she apparently answered in rambling, broken sentences, at one point even claiming that she was on a mission to avenge Michael Jackson's death, because he died just like 2 months before this happened, so I'm sure it was very much still news.
Oh, absolutely.
People talked about his death for a while, especially because a lot of people found it so controversial. So the valet kind of tipped off the hostess that she may be on drugs. He's like, something's going on with this young woman, and you guys should probably keep an eye on her. Still, Mitrice entered the restaurant. They didn't stop her from going in. She went in at about 7 p.m., which was right as the sun was setting in Malibu. The sun set at 6:55 p.m. that day. Obviously, since it would set behind the water, it's not like you're going to get darkness early like if you were in the mountains or something. So we have kind of a prolonged sunset here, which would have been really the perfect frickin' time to eat at Joffrey's. And she sat by herself. She ordered a cocktail and a Kobe steak for dinner. And those items, along with the valet charge, totaled to $89.51. Which is no real shock based on, where she was and what she ordered.
Yeah, this is kind of an upscale sort of restaurant, so ordering a cocktail and a steak, that's definitely gonna put you out about $90.
Yeah, and isn't Kobe steak like a nice cut?
Yes, it is.
I don't know shit about meat, but I did look it up, and apparently it's a really nice steak. So yeah, $90, no shock there. But then, after she ate and had her cocktail, she got it from her table, and she invited herself to join a table of 7 other patrons. This was just a group of people eating and dining together, and she pulled up a chair and started chatting to them about a few theories she had, as well as making a few kind of alarming statements that caused them to presume that she was not in her right state of mind. She talked at length about astrology and told them that she was from Mars, that her mom was Mother Earth, and that the ocean was calling her. And it doesn't seem like the staff really noticed this because she remained at their table as the group wound down, even after they paid their tab and left. So it's not like she was causing so many issues that the staff of this nice restaurant said, hey, we gotta take you out of here.
That, and the people that were at that table also didn't kick her, or push her away from the table. They weren't like, oh, this girl's being really crazy, let's get her away from here. They just kind of entertained her being there with them.
Yeah, I mean, none of them said, hey, security,
Yeah.
So maybe they were interested in what she was saying, or maybe they just felt bad. Like, we really don't know.
And she actually got up and left the table after they left, so she stayed even longer than they did.
Yeah, and she didn't make it out of the restaurant like them because the staff did notice, hey, you didn't pay your bill for your cocktail and your Kobe steak. And she seemed confused by this. She said that she thought her table mates would cover it, and then that Mother Nature would take care of it. So I don't know if she went over to this table hoping to befriend them and hoping they would pick up her tab, or if she just decided afterwards that, oh, they can pay for it, or if this was part of these seeming delusions that she was having.
Yeah, I think at this point it's very clear that Mitrice is very confused about what's going on.
Well, probably because of her confidence, the manager of the restaurant didn't know really how to proceed with Mitrice. Overall, this was a very strange situation from before she even entered the restaurant. 24-year-old Mitrice then casually wondered if she left her credit cards in her car, but they weren't recovered. Her debit card, however, was found in her belongings with a balance of over $2,000. She reportedly also had cash in her purse, which she continued to decline to use to pay her $89 bill. So this wasn't even a matter of, oh shit, I don't have the money, why did I come here? She has money. Whether or not she could afford the dinner is another conversation, but she could pay her bill.
Yeah, in her mind, she's thinking that somebody else already did pay her bill.
Well, according to the manager, she even offered to have sex with him to settle the matter instead.
Well, that was definitely a no-go, so when asked if there was anyone that they could contact to resolve the matter, Mitrice suggested that they call Mildred, her 91-year-old great-grandmother. And they actually did contact her, with Mildred offering to pay the balance, but they wouldn't take her credit card over the phone because she would need to sign for it in person. Now, by this point, it was after 8 p.m. and almost completely dark outside. And with Watts being over an hour away, this was not an option for Mildred at the time. She's not going to drive all the way up to Malibu, to pay this tab in person. So they offered to let her fax her signature, but Mildred didn't have access to a fax machine.
This poor woman, she probably wants to help her great-granddaughter so bad and is just trying to help her figure it out.
Yeah, and she just doesn't know how to make it work.
Yeah.
Well, sensing trouble, a few of the employees offered to pay for the bill themselves so that Mitrice could be released. But the manager, who seemed genuinely concerned about her well-being and state of mind, as well as the risk that she posed as a driver, wanted to call the police instead, because this wasn't just a case of her having left her card at home or something. Her behavior as a whole was deeply worrisome. Upon mention of the police, Mitrice became jumpy and very nervous, seeming to sense what would become her impending arrest. But still, a hostess at Joffrey's called 911 saying, quote, "Hi, I'm calling from Joffrey's restaurant in Malibu. We have a guest here who is refusing to pay her bill. We think she sounds really crazy. She may be on drugs or something. We were wondering if you could come by and pick her up." Now, Mitrice was not known to use drugs, recreationally or otherwise, but when police arrived, they gave her a field sobriety test just in case, which she did pass, meaning that she wasn't under the influence, and the disturbing things that she was saying had to be due to something else, like possibly an undiagnosed mental health condition. Mitrice even told the responding officer that she had not been diagnosed with a mental illness, nor was she on drugs, which naturally just confused them. Well, inside her car was less than 1 ounce of marijuana, which, when combined with her behavior and her failure to pay her balance, was cause for detainment, since recreational marijuana was not legalized in California until 2016, so still illegal at this point. And because she was arrested and her car was left with valet, and then she went missing, Mitrice's car was impounded, with her wallet and her cell phone still inside the car.
In his report, the arresting officer wrote simply that she was acting, quote, ditzy, and that he and the employees of Joffrey's were worried about her. So she was officially arrested for defrauding an innkeeper and possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana.
So defrauding an innkeeper? What?
Yeah, that's basically the official term for dining and dashing. I had never heard of it either.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so Mitrice was brought into the nearby police station. It's not that close. It's probably 15, 20 minutes away. To be held for the time being, though why she wasn't brought in for a psychiatric evaluation is unknown. But considering the reporting officer just said she was ditzy, maybe he thought that she just smoked weed or something. I don't know. Maybe he had never been around someone who was stoned before and thought somehow this is what that was.
Yeah, and that's probably just the police jumping to conclusions. Not really, it's interesting because you could easily be this police officer, find some weed in somebody's car and just go, oh, well, they're just stoned. That's why they're acting so weird. It must not be, a mental illness or something like that.
But when was the last time you were around somebody who was stoned? Me. And
yeah, you.
They've had delusions. This isn't somebody who's high on marijuana. This is something else. And maybe they didn't care to figure that out. Maybe they just said, oh, this nutty lady needs to be arrested and then we'll let her go and I'll move on with my life. Maybe they just didn't care.
But that's kind of what I'm saying or what I'm thinking is that there's a bit of negligence going on right here.
100%. From literally the jump, and it's going to get so much worse. Well, meanwhile, her great-grandmother Mildred called Lettice to tell her what was going on over at Joffrey's. And confused, Lettice called the restaurant. But by then, her daughter had already been arrested. So then, Lettice called the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Department It's not in Malibu. I don't think there's enough crime in Malibu for there to be one.
Yeah, it's a pretty sleepy town.
And this area is like really all connected. Like Agora and Malibu really bleed into each other. So Agora is where the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Department is located. That's where I grew up. This is in northern Los Angeles County. And like I said, it's just about 20-ish, maybe a little bit less minutes inland from Joffrey's restaurant. So Letice asked if her daughter could be released or bailed out immediately and told them that she would be on her way if that was the case to come pick her up. I mean, she wanted to pick Mitrice up, but she was also in kind of a tough spot because she was home alone with her 10-year-old daughter, Mitrice's younger half-sister. So she asked the officer if she could come immediately anyway, or if perhaps Mitrice would maybe have to face an arraignment in the morning, in which case she would just come in the morning. Then came one of the most chilling details of Mitrice's disappearance. Letice said to the officer who took her call, quote, "Are you guys going to book her and then release her tonight? Because it's dark. She doesn't have a car, and I don't want her wandering. I mean, she's not from that area, and I would hate to wake up to a morning report, girl lost somewhere with her head chopped off."
That is horrifyingly eerie.
Truly. But the deputy assured her, saying, "You don't have to worry about her safety." To which Letice replied, "Oh yeah, no, I feel safe with her being in custody. It's her being released that I'm worried about. It's crazy out here." Based on what we'll be getting into in this episode, Letice said later that those words now haunt her and felt like an omen for what was to come.
So, having been told that 24-year-old Mitrice was not going to be released that night, Letice slept for a few hours and called back again around 5:30 a.m., though some reports claim that this was as early as 4:30 a.m. And police told her simply that Mitrice had been released around 12:30 a.m., though this time also varies between 12:15 to 1:30 a.m. So, like Daphne said, Mitrice's car with her phone inside was at the impound lot 15 miles or 24 kilometers away, meaning exactly as her mom had been worried about, Mitrice didn't have her car, and she had no way of getting home at this point.
And just to kind of give you guys an idea of what this exact area is like, because I grew up in Agora and Calabasas, and this police station is cradled at the border of both towns. Some would say it's technically in Calabasas, others would say it's in Agora. But both, like this entire area, it's very quiet, it's very suburban, I would say very safe, usually. But it's also rural. This area bleeds right into Malibu and the mountains and the canyon surrounding it, even though this particular police station is right off the freeway. But you can't really walk anywhere. Like, if you're outside that police station at midnight, nothing is open. The streets are empty and spread out. And especially without her phone and car and wallet, like, I don't know how police expected her to get anywhere.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's very, very spread out. And yeah, it's so funny to think about just how safe this area generally is. But yeah, I would hate to be stranded out there in the middle of the night, because even like in the city, if you come a little bit more into the city, there are businesses that are still open. There are places where you can go.
Yeah.
Out there, it is dead past like 10 p.m.
Yeah, like, you know where the Calabasas Air One is? Like, this is literally around the corner and just up the road from that. But that Air One and that parking lot with all those businesses in it that's there now was just a really old house at this time. That was not, there weren't businesses until you go down and down that road. Like, it's not, this is houses and suburbs and canyons and mountains.
Yeah, it was not as developed as it is today. But even if this did happen today, you'd still be in the same kind of predicament where there's not really any place to go.
Yeah, because this isn't the city.
And that's exactly why Letice was shocked and appalled at this news, that she had been released, but deputies told her that they had no legal reason to hold her daughter any longer, and that by the time they reached the station, she was showing no signs of mental incapacity. So they didn't think that there was anything really wrong with her at this point. Sheriff spokesman Steve Whitmore later said to the press, quote, "She exhibited no signs of mental illness or intoxication. She was fine. She's an adult."
Which, Fair, but even for her safety or as a courtesy, because I know those guys weren't busy that night.
Yeah, there's nothing going on in that area.
Nothing going on. Very little goes bad here. They certainly could have given Letice a call or offered Mitrice a ride. Like, she's a young woman, and it's 1 a.m.
Oh, 100%. But something, really disappointing here is that her behavior at Joffrey's was apparently not detailed in the police report, and therefore was not made known to the deputies at the station. So, according to them, they just thought that she was completely fine because they didn't know about anything that had happened previously. But still, fine or not, they definitely should have done, the right thing here and make sure that she was headed home or headed in the right direction. But on the flip side, journalists later disputed this claim, alleging that the deputy at the Lost Hills station knew that Mitrice was not in her right state of mind, but simply did not exhibit enough care towards the situation, and were backpedaling after her disappearance to kind of cover for themselves. The deputy who spoke with Letice on the phone also failed to alert his coworkers to the call that he had with Letice, claiming that she would come to get her daughter as soon as she was released. According to the correctional officer working the front of the station, her name was Sharon Cummings, Mitrice was led to the lobby and allowed to use the payphone, but a subsequent investigation revealed that the payphone was not working at the time of Mitrice's arrest. In the report written up by Sharon Cummings, Mitrice reportedly tried to call her great-grandmother Mildred 4 times, but Mildred says that she didn't receive a single call after she spoke to the manager at Joffrey's earlier that night.
Before being released, 24-year-old Mitrice agreed to appear in court on November 16th regarding this arrest, which was 2 months later. She was told that for her safety, she should remain at the station until someone could retrieve her, but she apparently declined their requests, telling officers that she was meeting up with friends, which again, as an adult, she was allowed to do. But, it's interesting that the police are saying, oh, we told her that she should wait for somebody to pick her up for her safety, but they also didn't call anybody. And they say she used the payphone, but then it turns out the payphone wasn't working. So, did you tell her to wait? It's really hard in this case to know if we could trust what they're saying.
I think that they weren't expecting her to go missing. And then when she did, They were like, oh shit, we've got to cover our asses. We saw her use the payphone. And it's like, oh, when you checked the payphone, it wasn't working, so you're clearly lying here.
Totally. So she set off on foot with only her driver's license and keys in hand. Now, learning of this hours later and still over an hour away in Covina, Letice was frantic. She made a series of panic calls to anyone who may have known her whereabouts or heard from Mitrice, hoping that she maybe somehow had met up with a friend. But no one had heard from her. So Letice called the Lost Hills Sheriff's Department back to report her daughter missing. In a panic, she told the dispatcher, quote, "I believe that she is highly depressed." When Letice was asked if she had taken any medication, if Mitrice had taken any, Letice said, quote, "No. I believe it's a state that she's in right now because of the weird activity that's been going on these past couple days." She then implored the detectives to file a missing persons report, but they pushed back and encouraged a 24-hour hold, clearly not deeming Mitrice's case an urgent one. At 6:30 a.m., so about an hour or so after Mitrice received the news that her daughter had been released earlier that morning, like way earlier, a local resident named Bill Smith called in to say that he had seen someone he described as a prowler in his backyard. Now, Bill lived on Cold Canyon Road in Montanito, which is a quiet community tucked in the Santa Monica Mountains between Calabasas and Malibu. Actually, when the police were taking her from Joffrey's restaurant to the Lost Hills Sheriff's Department, they would have passed the road he lives on because they had to have gone through Malibu Canyon. So this, when I say between, I mean it's on that exact route.
Right. So it seems like she's headed back on this same road back towards Joffrey's.
Yeah, essentially, going back the same way. Totally. And Bill offered up a description, weirdly, that matched that of Mitrice. And he said that he awoke for the day to find a young woman in his backyard. Obviously, he was very puzzled because his area is pretty remote. It's not accustomed to foot traffic at all. And when I say remote, obviously, you're only minutes from the freeway, you're minutes from PCH and other businesses, but it's remote in the sense that it's in the canyon.
Yeah.
So, he basically asked if she was okay, and Mitrice apparently said that she was just resting. But when he attempted to go out to talk to her, she vanished, running off into the wilderness. So this is very strange. This community, again, it's in Malibu Canyon. It's only about a 10-minute drive from the police station, but it's about a 2-hour walk that is partially through a winding canyon road with no sidewalks. Like, it's definitely possible to do, and there's not a lot of car traffic in the middle of the night either in this area, but it would have been so dark.
Oh, yeah, because there are no lights when you start going through that canyon. It is dark out there.
Yeah, actually, this is, really quick, I want to say, like the neighborhood right next to where Bill lived, I used to live in, and it's a really, really small community because it's nestled in these mountains, so there's not that many houses right here. But there, a few years ago, I was staying at my mom's house. I think actually you and I were dating, Heath. This was when I went back to visit my mom for like a few weeks.
Right.
And we woke up one morning to a group chat from the community. There was only like 10 houses in this neighborhood my mom lived in. And because at the bottom of the long driveway right off Malibu Canyon, literally like around the corner from where this happened, where Bill Smith lives, there was like a body dumped into a ditch.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, and this was also around the time, this is like a really weird time for this area because this was around the time that the Malibu Creek State Park shooter was around.
Yeah, and I want to say that Daphne's talking about like around like 2018, so she's not talking about like 2009.
Yeah.
Like way back then. But
yeah, I guess around this time, I mean like that decade. I've told this story on Going West before, but in Paramount Ranch, which is right next to this area, it's like part of the Santa Monica Mountains and Malibu Creek State Park. That's where like a lot of old Westerns are filmed. But it burned down and they're rebuilding it, which is amazing. But in that area, like literally every full moon, this is when I was in high school. So around the time that Mitrice went missing, because I was in high school in 2009, there would be these, like, me and my mom called them the witches, but these people wearing cloaks would park their cars along the canyon and they would walk into
like the pasture area, I want to say.
Yeah. And they would go up the canyon to get to this platform and they would leave offerings like flowers and frankincense with twine wrapped around it and all this weird stuff. So like, this is kind of a kooky area in some ways.
It is, yeah.
But this is that exact area around that very time that she went missing. So like, again, the reason it was so weird to see those witches is, well, I call them the witches, but is because there's really nobody out at night. You know, it's really, really quiet. So I'm just picturing Mitrice walking down this canyon road alone. Why?
And again, it would take about 2 hours to get to that area. So if she was released around 12:30, between 12:30 and 1:30, and Bill sees her around like 4:30-ish, Like, she had been probably walking for a long time.
Or Bill actually saw her at 6:30.
Oh, 6:30, right.
But even to your point then, that's even later. So she definitely had the time to make that walk.
Of course she did, but damn, that's a long walk.
Yeah, and again, why? And where are you going? And then the fact that she's in his backyard and she says she's just resting, which could make sense if she was tired from that walk, but it's all just so mysterious. Well, no missing persons report was ever filed for Mitrice, so there was no way of connecting this sighting to her officially, though it does seem like it was likely her. Like, really, who the hell else would this be?
Yeah, exactly.
So as Letice raced to the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station to find her daughter, it's very likely that she was still alive, potentially walking around disoriented in the rugged terrain of the Santa Monica Mountains. After calling in to report her daughter missing, the missing persons report that was not taken, she was tipped off by an officer about this sighting. So that's why at this point, she raced to the Montanito neighborhood to search for Mitrice there. Now, because of the distance between the sheriff's station and Bill Smith's house, about 6.5 miles or 10.5 kilometers, maybe a 10-ish minute drive, Letice felt strongly that Mitrice had been picked up by a vehicle and driven there. Though again, since about 5 to 6 hours had passed between her release and her sighting, it's definitely possible that she could have walked. As unsafe and far as it would have been.
Yeah, because it's definitely, you have to go uphill at certain points because it's a windy canyon. I mean, just picture having to walk up that. And then also the fact that when she encountered Bill Smith, she said, "Oh, I just need to rest." So that makes me believe that she probably had been walking that whole way.
We'll post like a Google street view of this area. It intersects Mulholland. So I'm trying to think if there's street lamps. I feel like there is.
They're probably in some areas, but definitely not throughout the entire canyon.
And again, it's like you're out there. At that point, you are in the canyon. You're surrounded by mountains.
Right. There's basically nobody that's going to come save you unless perhaps somebody might be driving that canyon road, which does happen, but it's, again, it's very quiet, so it could also be very unlikely.
And also kind of feels unlikely then that anybody would have picked her up, in my opinion, to then drop her off at the Montanito neighborhood. Like, why would they be like, somebody pick her up and take her there instead of somewhere else?
Right, I don't think that would have been the case.
I honestly do think that she walked. Now, with the sheriff's station apparently unwilling to help, Mitrice's family and friends, as well as some concerned volunteers, took matters into their own hands. They were passing out flyers, posting on social media, and leading a grassroots campaign. But by the following day, Friday, September 18th, 2009, Mitrice was still missing. So this was finally enough evidence, for her disappearance to elicit some support from within the sheriff's department. And a scent dog was brought out into the wilderness that surrounded the sheriff's station. This scent dog was brought to the vicinity of Bill Smith's home as well, and the dog did briefly pick up her scent, but eventually lost it at a neighboring home. Investigators also managed to locate footprints from the shoes that Mitrice is believed to have been wearing, and appeared to show that she had been running. But they were later trampled by horse hooves and other shoe prints when Mitrice's steps were met with a popular hiking trail.
A police psychologist analyzed her rambling social media posts and journal entries from the day leading up to her disappearance, and believed that Mitrice was suffering from a bout of intense mania, characterized by delusions of grandeur, or a byproduct of a manic break in which Mitrice likely believed that she was particularly important, such as when she said that she was planning on avenging the death of Michael Jackson, or perhaps even that she was holy or magical. In the days prior to her disappearance, Mitrice had written and posted so much that Letice mused that it was likely that she had not slept in days. But sadly, even the best efforts of her family were not enough to find her. 3 weeks after her disappearance, Los Angeles Police Department Detective Chuck Knowles announced in the press that the search was still ongoing, saying, quote, "She's out there. "We don't believe she's a victim of foul play." Her family pushed for the release of the surveillance footage from outside the police station, but their requests were denied, citing that the activity was not recorded, merely monitored. Mitrice's aunt Lauren was particularly irate at this statement, accusing them of protecting their own interests and alleging that they were lying to her family. When pressed, the sheriff's department admitted that they did in fact have recorded footage, but that it was not able to be released.
So sketchy. Like, why'd you say that you didn't have it and then you do?
I mean, yeah, seriously. What are you trying to protect here? I mean, it seems like they're just trying to protect themselves by proclaiming that the family had only requested exterior footage, which they did not have. So instead, they admitted that they had footage from inside the station, which would potentially shed light on Mitrice's movements and state of mind while in custody. Steve Whitmore conceded, quote, "Should they have been more forthcoming and said, well, but there is this? Perhaps, and you have to ask yourself, was this done because we were scared of covering up, of misbehavior and missteps? I don't think so." And, in fact, Tom Martin, who was the police captain at the time, claimed that the tape didn't exist, when in fact, it was in a drawer inside his desk.
In his desk?
Yeah, in his desk. And by the way, it's worth noting that Captain Tom Martin was later fired for sexual misconduct after a rape allegation, because 2 months before Mitrice went missing, a woman claims that he pulled her over, asked her to get out of the car and go into the back seat, where he raped her and then threatened her that no one would believe her because she was in recovery at the time for drug use.
Insane.
That is so crazy to me.
Sick. Sick. And she didn't come forward before Mitrice went missing, so he was just continuing to work.
Yep.
Well, Mitrice's parents were finally shown the footage on March 29th, 2010, so 6 months after she went missing, which showed her pacing the cell and appearing, by her mom's description, agitated. Toward the end of the footage, her family noticed a male deputy exiting the station around the same time that Mitrice was released, and wondered if he was pursuing her or ultimately had anything to do with her disappearance, naturally. So this deputy was at the station with his partner to drop off someone who had just been arrested. Then an hour later, the pair made a routine traffic stop in the area about 6 miles from the station, but they said that they were told that there were no deputies at the station at the time. But still, the LAPD and Lost Hills Sheriff Station stood by their decisions. So, Mitrice's parents secured an attorney in order to mount a better search, and finally, her case garnered enough attention in the community to warrant an intensive search, following public outcry. On January 9th, 2010, so before they were shown that footage, the Los Angeles Police Department mounted the largest and most extensive search in the county in over 20 years. The efforts included 300 volunteers combing the brush on both ATV and horseback. Helicopters and drones circled overhead, and more dogs were marched through the brush. But still, no evidence was found that would point towards Mitrice's whereabouts. And remember this, that all of this searching was happening in this vicinity of Bill's house as well, and they found nothing. More than 70 tips came in with eyewitness sightings, including from somebody Mitrice personally knew and her own father. People believed that she was out there across LA, Vegas, specifically by her father, and beyond, just wandering around. But on April 9th, 2010, only a couple weeks after her parents saw that footage of her in the station, these suspicions proved false. Because Mitrice's body was found in the aptly named Dark Canyon, which is a remote area of Malibu Canyon not far from Montanido, where she had last been spotted in the yard of Bill Smith's house. While searching for a defunct marijuana farm located off of Piuma Road, a pair of park rangers happened upon human remains. But The next move made by the Lost Hills Sheriff's Department has been one of its most controversial throughout the course of the years-long investigation. Claiming concerns about the sanctity of the scene of her discovery and apparently not wanting to leave it vulnerable to another chilly canyon night rife with animal activity, Mitrice's remains were removed without the supervision of the county coroner, disturbing what could be the scene of a crime. The sheriff's office later alleged that they had the express permission from the county coroner's office to do this, but this claim was later brought under scrutiny.
On August 12, 2010, the sheriff's department announced to the public that the remains were confirmed to belong to Mitrice, again assuring the public, quote, "We have no indication of a homicide at this point." According to the preliminary exam and the condition, it was determined that it could have been there 6 months to over a year.
Which obviously she went missing 7 months earlier, so...
Yeah, that does kind of line up.
It does line up.
So obviously, the scene of the discovery left her family with more questions than they had when she went missing. Because Mitrice was found nude, with several items of her clothing scattered in the vicinity, and some that were confirmed to be missing. Though the autopsy could not determine how long she had been left out in the elements, her body was partially mummified. Her right leg was detached from her body, and her femur was missing. Her left arm was bent over her chest, 5 of the bones in her neck were missing, and her head was detached from her body as well. Now, one possibility is that in the midst of her mental health episode, she removed her clothes, which is not unheard of for someone in the state in which Mitrice was believed to be in. But her socks, shoes, shirt, and underwear are still missing. Investigators blame the scattered and missing clothing on potential water corrosion or possible animal activity at the scene, which is possible, but another misstep occurred when Lost Hills deputies failed to take pictures of the scene. And sadly, because of the timeline, there was no way for the medical examiner to determine how much of this was due to animal activity, and what, if anything, could be attributed to another person leaving her body there after they potentially murdered her.
Just ball drop after ball drop.
Yeah, they really sucked on this case.
Well, according to the autopsy, there was no evidence of sexual assault or trauma, but because of all the missing bones and the amount of decomposition, which was very severe, it was extremely hard, if not impossible, to tell. And her clothing was not tested for seminal fluid, and they did not test other hair found at the scene either. Her body was found 1.3 miles or 2 kilometers from Bill Smith's house, despite the sheriff's department's assurance that they searched within a 3-mile radius of the home. Now, officially, her autopsy ruled her cause and manner of death as undetermined. But unconvinced, her mom sought an independent autopsy. So over a year after the discovery, in July of 2011, Mitrice's body was exhumed. Respected forensic anthropologist and author Clea Koff performed that second autopsy. And because there was no decomposition fluid on her clothes, that proves that they were removed before her death. Clea classified the death as suspicious, but could not determine a cause or manner without a shadow of a doubt. So naturally, many wonder if Mitrice had been sexually assaulted by somebody prior to her death, perhaps an officer, and that's why her clothes were scattered around the scene. Or, like we said, it happened during a mental health episode. But for anybody wondering as well about hypothermia, the high was 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the area that day. It stays really hot over here for a while, into fall. It's going to be 85 on Halloween this year?
Yeah, pretty much.
But it got to a low of about 65 degrees in the night. So very even tempered. It was not cold, especially if she was walking. She probably would have been honestly kind of hot.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, obviously, if police involvement is to blame, it would explain the inaction and suspicious choices. But this may just have been a case of severe mishandling by multiple people. Because she was wandering the roads by herself in the night, it's also possible that she accepted a ride from the wrong person, or that someone living in the area recognized her state of mind at the time and saw her as an easy target, then used the remote canyon to dispose of her body.
I mean, yeah, it's not very often that somebody is randomly walking, through this canyon, so if somebody was an opportunist, it would be very easy to take advantage.
And a beautiful young woman at that. Well, though her family and many in the community feel strongly that foul play is to blame for Mitrice's disappearance and death, the sheriff's department has leaned toward the conclusion that Mitrice spent the early morning of September 17th, 2009, wandering the back roads and wilderness of Malibu and wound up falling prey to an accident or the elements, bolstered by her mental health episode, which was likely making her more energetic and invincible than she would normally feel. I think a second ago I said September 17th, by the way.
Yeah, the 17th is when she was at Joffrey's,
yes.
But because it was the next day, so it was the 18th.
Yeah, sorry. So the morning of the 18th is what I meant. But sadly, for now, her family is still waiting for answers. In 2010, Mitrice's parents filed a lawsuit against the Lost Hills Sheriff's Department for wrongful death and negligence, and were eventually paid out $900,000. They won this lawsuit.
Yeah, so they admitted, the Lost Hills Sheriff's Department essentially admitted that they did screw this up.
Well, at least they were found guilty of it. Like,
Sure.
This just proves that they messed up, and we all know that. There's no
now we know justice was slightly served in that case.
No freaking doubt about it. But ultimately, instead of all the headlines and speculation, what Letice wants people to remember about her daughter is not the fervent search and her chaotic final hours. Letice told the Malibu Times, quote, "What I would like people to know and associate with Mitrice is humanity. Just being caring and loving toward one another, being there to step in and help others when they are in need. That's what Mitrice was about. She was definitely an advocate for others. That was a passion of hers when she was alive."
Journalist Dana Goodyear produced Season 4 of the Lost Hills podcast, which actually focused on Mitrice's disappearance and death, and had help from Malibu-based writer Cece Woods, who also helped raise awareness for another famed Malibu disappearance, which is that of Elaine Park, and we did cover that cover that case in episode 469 of Going West.
Yeah, that was earlier this year. That is another really weird case that happened in this area. You should definitely go listen if you haven't.
Absolutely. Go check it out. But for those of you guys who did listen, you will remember that Elaine disappeared from the same stretch of highway on which Mitrice was arrested. And her disappearance was investigated by the same sheriff's department. Lost Hills offers up a possible person of interest who was actually questioned in Mitrice's disappearance. A local man with a history of violence towards women named Rick Forsberg. And Rick was actually given 2 lie detector tests, both of which he passed, but his name is still considered in the breadth of possibilities in Mitrice's strange death.
Letice funneled her grief into writing a book about her experience titled Mitrice, A Mother's Journey from Despair to Desire. Speaking candidly, Letice shared, quote, "Losing a child is never something that anyone can ever prepare for. To get through that process, I believe that it is important to have a spiritual foundation to hold on to." She claimed that her faith allowed her to come to terms with what happened to her beloved daughter, adding, quote, "I was able to then focus on Mitrice's life and the joy I had for the time that I had her." Of course, Letice still hopes for answers and continues to spread awareness about her daughter's death, saying, quote, "Someone in the community knows something about what happened to Mitrice. We need them to come forward. We need to bring those involved with Mitrice's murder to justice. We're not going to be able to do that without the help of the individual or individuals who know what happened to Mitrice. Please help us bring justice to Mitrice." If you have any information about the death of 24-year-old Mitrice Richardson, please call Los Angeles Crime Stoppers at 800-222-TIPS. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Going West.
Yes, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Please share Mitrice's story. Her family is still looking for the right answers because so far they have not got the answers that they deserve.
It's just so hard to know what happened here, and I think the autopsy being inconclusive, though suspicious, of course, and all the fuckery in the sheriff's department makes it so hard to really land on something concrete. Like, I can't say, oh, she was definitely murdered, but I also feel I have a hard time saying, I think this was just a weird accident. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this case is really nobody knows. And that's why we're still...
Unless maybe one person knows.
It's possible. It's very possible. But thank you guys again for listening to this episode. Let us know what your thoughts are on this case, and we will see you guys on Friday.
Yes, please go follow us on socials. We're on Instagram at Going West Podcast, and we are also on TikTok at Going West Podcast and on Facebook.
All right, guys. So for everybody out there in the world,
don't be a stranger.